In this video, we will show you how to replace the alternator on the Chevy Malibu with a 2.5-liter engine. This will be located along the passenger side rear of your engine. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is disconnect the negative battery terminal. Turn this 10mm nut counterclockwise just enough that you can remove the terminal end from the battery. A quick inspection and set it aside. If you see any corrosion, just go ahead and clean that up. Now that we've disconnected the battery, let's make our way over towards the passenger side of the engine compartment. We're looking for where the mass airflow sensor is on the air filter housing. Disconnect the electrical connector. You're going to find that you have a red locking tab here. Just go ahead and pull that out of place. After you have that slid rearward, you can press down on this locking tab in the center and disconnect it. Once you have that disconnected, give it a quick inspection for corrosion. Assuming the wiring looks good, go ahead and set that aside. Let's move along from there to this hose clamp. Go ahead and loosen this just enough that you can remove the air intake hose from this inlet tube. You can use an 8mm or a flathead screwdriver. Now you'll find that you have 5 Phillips head screws holding the top of the air filter housing to the lower housing. Let's lift this up from here. Now as we lift this up, the wiring harness does come along the backside here, but we're not worried about that. We'll just rest this aside. Continue on to removing your air filter. This is for good measure. First of all, we can have a look and see if it has to be replaced. Secondly, we definitely don't want anything falling on this side of the air filter, in which case it would get drawn up into the engine. Let's remove the lower housing here. You want to make sure that you lift it up from the front and then slide it out along the rear. With that out of the way, let's have a look close to where the water pump pulley is. Look just below and rearward. That's where you're going to find your serpentine belt tensioner. We're going to have to use a 1/2-inch drive tool here. You can use a serpentine belt tool or even a 1/2-inch drive ratchet. Before you remove the belt, have a close look and pay attention to the belt routing. It goes over some pulleys and under others. While turning this counterclockwise, we're going to remove the belt from one of the pulleys. Be extremely careful for any pinch points. Remove your tool from the area and then give your belt a close inspection. If it looks like it's torn, worn, or damaged, now's the perfect time to replace it. This belt looks fine. At this point, you don't have to fully remove the belt from the area, but we do have to make our way along the backside here where the alternator is located. Get the belt off of the alternator here. Let's move along to the electrical connector along the backside of the alternator. For this, you're going to find you have a locking tab. Go ahead and squeeze that in and then pull it out of place. A quick inspection for corrosion, set it aside. Now we can move just below that area. You're going to find that you have a rubber boot. Before you remove this boot, it's important to note that you have to have that negative battery terminal disconnected. At this point, let's continue on to removing the boot from the area, and then we can remove the mounting nut located just behind it, holding the wiring in place. We'll use a 13mm for this mounting nut. Once you have the wiring off of there, once again, we're going to give it a quick inspection. If it looks like it has to be cleaned up, go ahead and use some sandpaper. Set your wiring harness aside. With the wiring disconnected, we can continue on with our 13mm. We're going to start dismounting the alternator from the engine. Now here you're going to find that you have two 13mm headed bolts, and you'll also have one stud with a 13mm headed mounting nut. Inspect your mounting hardware as you remove it, replace it as necessary. All right, let's take hold of the alternator and start removing it from the vehicle. Now to help getting the alternator up and out of here, we're going to remove the engine cover. To remove the engine cover, go ahead and remove your engine oil cap. We'll turn that counterclockwise. For good measure, give the seal a quick inspection. Continue on to removing all three of your T27 Torx screws holding the cover down. Remove the engine cover and set that aside. Reinstall your engine oil cap temporarily. There it is, friends. With the alternator out of there, let's have a look down in this area. We're going to pay attention to our power wire. We want to make sure that we take a nice piece of sandpaper and scuff each side of this wire so we can have great contact up against that brand new alternator. Now once you've scuffed both sides of that and you're sure there's no corrosion, continue on to inspecting each one of your mounting points. Up along the top we do have that stud. Inspect the shafted area, make sure it's not rotted or weak. Aside from that, we also have those two mounting points. We'll just lightly scuff those with the sandpaper. We want to make sure that there's no debris in this area. Okay, let's prepare to install our brand new alternator. While we bring this into position, be extremely careful not to cause any damage where the electrical connectors are located. Take this and bring it down into position, carefully sliding it past your fuel line and other hoses and lines. Let's make sure we have this facing in the proper direction. We want to have the area with the two prongs up along the top so we can slide that ear over that stud. Now we can continue on with the rest of the mounting bolts. Go ahead and start those in and we'll snug them up. Continue on with the mounting nut, bottom that out as well. Let's get this aligned here. Now that we have all of the mounting hardware started, snug it up, torque that to 16 foot-pounds. Now it's time to reconnect that positive wire down there. Go ahead and take that, put it in position, start your mounting nut on there, snug it up, and torque that to 132 inch-pounds. If you can't gain access with a torque wrench, just make sure it's nice and snug. Be extremely careful not to over torque and break this. Protect the area with its protective rubber boot. Make sure the entire area is completely covered. If the cover is damaged in any way, you need to protect it with something, otherwise you might have an issue where this grounds out and that's going to cause a major issue. Continue on to your next electrical connector. For this one, just go ahead and line it up and press it in, listen for a click, make sure it's secure. Perfect. Now it's time to reinstall the serpentine belt. When we do this, we want to make sure that we are completely seated over each one of the rungs on the pulleys. Now most of the pulleys will have a ribbed area like here, others will be smooth. The ones with the ribbed area need to have the ribbed area of the belt going around them. The smooth pulleys will have the backing. Let's carefully take this and start putting it in position. We will have to have our serpentine belt tool ready so we can go ahead and release tension and slide it into the proper position. Across here, I'm looking across the water pump pulley, all the way down to the AC compressor there. I can see it's making its way across. I can also see that it's going across the tensioner pulley as it needs to. At this point, I'm holding pressure on the belt, preparing to bring it around that alternator pulley. Let's take hold of our serpentine belt tool, get it in place, release tension from the tensioner, and carefully put this over the pulley, being careful for any pinch points. Now look down at that alternator. If you see the belt sitting off even by one tooth, like this right here, it's going to destroy the belt and potentially cause other damage. Pay close attention and ensure that you're on each one of the pulleys properly. Remove your serpentine belt tool. Let's get this out of the way. Get this cover out of the way. Reinstall your engine cover. Reinstall your oil cap. Continue on with all three of your T27 Torx screws. Start them in and then snug them up. Now we can install our lower air filter housing. We'll pay attention along the back side there. We do have that mounting point. Go ahead and slide it right in there. Now while we bring this down across the front, we have the alignment points here. We want to make sure we don't squish any wiring. Align it, press it in. Go ahead and give that a wiggle. Make sure it's completely secured. Continue on with your air filter. Make sure it's seated all the way around. After that, we'll install our upper air filter housing. For this, we'll be coming from the side, bring it down at an angle. Carefully bring it down into position, paying attention to all of your mounting screws. We want to make sure that they're properly aligned. If you have to lift them up, you can do that. Just start each of those in by hand. You don't want to tighten any of these until you're sure everything's aligned properly. Let's snug them up. Let's get this on here. Make sure it's completely seated. Tighten your 8mm headed clamp. Take hold of that tube, give it a little tug. It's important to make sure this is completely secured and not loose in any way. If it is, you might have dirty and unmetered air making its way into the engine, which could cause catastrophic damage and/or a check engine light. Let's move along to our mass airflow sensor connector. Go ahead and take that and slide it into position. Listen for a click. Give it a tug, make sure it's secured, lock it in. One last check here. Make your way to your negative battery terminal. Let's get this in position here. Tighten your 10mm headed mounting nut. Make sure this is nice and snug. Now that we have the negative battery terminal connected, the next thing that you need to do is go ahead and start up the vehicle. Let it run for approximately 5 seconds and turn it right back off. After that, make your way out here and have a quick look at the belt with the vehicle off. Triple check to make sure the belt is completely seated as it needs to be. Okay friend, we showed you how to install the alternator on your vehicle. At this point, go ahead and hop inside the passenger compartment. Start up your vehicle, let it run. Make sure you have no check engine light, no running condition, and make sure that the alternator is functioning as it should. After that, you can go ahead and close the hood and then take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.